Please think about think about sitting more in the front, because this is a discussion session, and even though Stefan will using his Fit smartwatch is counting his steps, but he has to run around with the microphone. So the more you come, or the nearer you come to us, the better for the discussion, because it will be a discussion session, and we'll pass around the mic a lot. So there is still people coming in. This is nice. Please consider to sit in the front, because otherwise we'll have to run around so much with the microphone. Yeah. Okay, so welcome to our session. I am Katja Meyer from the University of Vienna, and this is my colleague Stefan Skupien from the Berlin University Alliance. And over there sits our colleague Jochen Knaus from the Weizenbaum Institute. And we are here because we want to know your thoughts on whether or not openness might be in decline, how you feel about especially data sharing, but maybe also thinking about infrastructures or code or things that are, part of the data sharing ecology, whether data sharing is somehow stuck in the middle of these nice ideas of creating fair, machine-readable AI commons, and on the other hand, being predatorily captured by big corporations, which is something that we are well aware of, because it touches upon a lot of old problems that we know very well in open science. And somehow they are very similar, and I'm not going to read all these things, and anyway we're going to share our slides anyway, but most importantly it's the velocity and the scale things are happening right now, and the feelings that we get as feedback from a lot of researchers that we have talked to, but also a lot of infrastructure managers and data stewards that tell us that they feel a total loss of control and other problems, which we'll come back to in a bit. So this is the context of today. We feel there is a growing caution among also those long-time advocates for open science, because they don't really know where things are going. And, we've talked about disciplinary cultures, epistemic cultures, as we would call it also today as well. So there is very, very different ways of how data are produced in fields. The amount of data is produced in fields, the formats data are shared, and the standards people use. And we see how hard it is to, standardize this or put it on a universal ground truth level where we can all talk about these things. So, same problems. And we will ask you 3 questions today. For the people being at home, I think there's the camera. Hi. Thanks for joining us. We will also have the Slido Q&A open. So whenever you have a question for this audience here to discuss, which is not among the 3 questions that we're going to present to you in a bit, please put it in the Q&A. We'll pick it up later in the session. So we'll have a very short introduction, and then we'll have 3 rounds of maximum 10 minutes, like discussing in the plenary, no groups, really like running around with the microphones. And then we'll hopefully document our collective insights. Jochen will help us sitting over there. But also you, of course, are all encouraged to put your thoughts in the Google Doc, where you have the link over here. And now I give the microphone to my colleague, Stefan.
Thank you. I want to give a bit more of context, our motivation to bring this panel up here. And that was one event we had in March in Berlin, in an event where we had nearly the same question, but with a slightly more different focus on open infrastructures. And we invited persons from civil society, economy, and public service as well. And we had a 2-panel discussion, and we will update the website so you can watch it. And then at the Weizenbaum Institute as a host. and 8 World Cafe sessions in which people also brought together a lot of ideas. And the question was, the aim was to explore experiences and needs to foster AI that includes and supports open science across domains. So thinking positively about AI and how it could help us. The results were that we developed a shared vision that in the end we put into papers, which is a socially accepted digital culture in which AI technologies are designed to be transparent, reproducible, sustainable, and oriented toward the common good. Key guiding principles are based on open science. We then wrote together 2 papers. One is a discussion paper, one is a policy paper, and where we outlined 4 key strategic areas, all based on our protocols from the discussion we had with politicians and with a lot of key stakeholders and experts from diverse areas, from civil society and others. So the 4 key strategic areas where we should engage is shared knowledge spaces, skills development and education, bringing both together, open science in AI and vice versa. Sustainable development through open digital infrastructure, governance, combining responsibility and innovation. There's a discussion paper out today and the policy paper as well. I have a flyer here with the QR code. So if you are interested already now, before sharing, before waiting for the slides on Zenodo, you can come up to us and we give you the QR code. And the back already lying there. So that is the background we had for this panel.
And I also have a bit more of a background. So in the last 5 years, I've conducted a project which was dealing with open data practices in the computational social sciences, a big field in itself, very different epistemic cultures, very different traditions of, sharing or not sharing data, especially. And there, and totally unintended, in the last 3 years, since 2022, when ChatGPT was launched and a lot of generative AI flooded science. In my interviews that I conducted, I started to hear growing complaints and skepticism towards sharing data, especially also from people that were once big advocates of open science and open data sharing, for a lot of different reasons, and I'm going to introduce you to them in a bit. So this is basically my habilitation project, which will be ending soon, and I'm right now working on the publication. So actually it's really cool for me to have you all here and to kind of hear your perspective on these things, because sorry, I was too fast. This is not working. I'm very sorry. I want to go back. Oh, I'm totally pressing the wrong buttons. And I see Slido is not working, by the way, but we'll come back to that. So yes, here. Very sorry for that. Ooh, and that is really small. So I'm going to give you just some examples of people that told me just horrific stories how generative AI has altered their, everyday work. For example, think about infrastructures that are there to share data. For example, in social media research, where they come under huge pressure of data scrapers or crawlers every day, that they have to start limiting the access just because these infrastructures are not very strong and they are in a precarious state, and there's maybe 1/2 or 1/4 of a position dedicated or funded to run these infrastructures that simply cannot cope with the requests that they get for the data. There is also a lot of complaints about how when AI is used, questions of reproducibility come under attack, if you like. So there is not a lot of good strategies out there how to make data more reproducible with or data that were also produced with the help of AI. There's also a lot of criticism against this machine readability verification of data, even though there's a lot of support for it, but the skepticism that comes with it, that when in especially the social sciences, these verification ideas are imported, and they are somehow imposed in a very strict sense on what the people are doing. They feel that their data and their metadata is flattened too much. They don't leave space enough for, a lot of other information that would be important to share, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of different reasons to become skeptical. And I also heard a lot of people saying, I have taken down my data. I'm not sharing my data anymore. This is, of course, coming from the social sciences, a lot of different social sciences. So it's very different in many other fields. And sometimes it's also hard to compare the rationale behind these things. But nevertheless, this is the background from where we want to ask you the following question. So, and here we are with the 3 questions. The number 1 question that you should also already see on Slido. Let's see if it works. But first I explain it to you. In your own research or practice, which might be more related to administration or infrastructures or libraries or whatever, have you noticed that openness is becoming harder to pursue? Do you hear skepticism like I've just shared, or are you even coming under attack in the age of AI, as we call it nowadays? Of course, there's a lot of different AIs, but let's keep the umbrella term for now. So I've just told you about the infrastructural strain, the loss of context in machine readability, but also maybe the lack of recognition even more. This is even becoming a bigger problem. And of course, also the challenges in governing data reuse and reproducibility. So let us try. This is what I feared. So now we have to change the slide to exactly. So there you have the QR, and you can. This will produce a word cloud, as far as I remember, when I put this in, and so we'll see what your ideas are around this, and then we have a microphone already, because now we start discussing, and the 2 of us have microphones, and why is openness increasingly difficult in the age of AI? Who wrote knowledge security, or maybe also research security? You want to share with us maybe why you think this might be a problem?
I mean, I'm working often at a pretty high policy level, and certainly over the last six or 9 months, the geopolitical situation is read by top leadership very much as something that requires an urgent answer about the perceived gap between open science and the requirement for knowledge security and export controls, etc. And right now, I think we don't have a good answer about how this fits together.
Yeah, so for also building the bioweapons, I know. I mean, we have to be. Let's say, consider that this is also an old topic, right? So this topic is there since we are pursuing open science in a way. It's just, again, that we are now facing a different level of velocity. And also, I think there will be tomorrow a session, no? Guido, will there be a session tomorrow on research security? Oh, I thought this might be a topic in another session. I don't know. Okay, whatever. So I'm mistaken. Sorry for that. There is another voice or perspective, please.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I come from Canada, so slightly bit different framework. But we recently conducted a focus group with scientists, students, and also research participants. My institute is a hospital-based research institute, and we sort of went over what open science means and a lot of things around it. And the main thing that we captured this year was there's a lot of apprehension for re-identification by AI. Yes. So there's a lot of rethinking, as we've discussed earlier, about consent and what does consent means. Did they consent for the data to be used to be scraped by AI? So there's a lot of open questions, and even scientists are worried that they're breaching their professional responsibility when they put the data out there, because AI is going to scrape it and it's going to be used for profit purposes. So there's a lot of issues and questions around that.
Yeah. So this is a big issue. I can also find it in my data that you put a lot of effort in de-identification. And that comes a machine that is possible to pull together in Palantir style all the information that is out there. Anybody else wants to add on the security topic? I don't see a hand at the moment, but we have other things here too. Copyright. I find that quite interesting. I mean, IPR has always been, you know, a big topic. The next problem was that I don't know how it is for you, but for me, I'm still struggling very much in the organizations that I work for or visit to explain that openness is not always exactly the opposite of copyright, that there is different shades of openness that go very well together with IPR and so on and so forth. It's complicated. Then there's the second problem that I think I've talked to someone already today about it, the problem of ownership. What is it? What does it mean, data ownership? In most cases, there is not such a thing as data ownership. You can have a database ownership legally, but who owns that then? This is not the researchers, but the institutions. It's not a problem that is very well understood. And based on already this confusion, now with like scrapers reusing data that we are not so sure about their ownership anyway, might also be a big problem. So who put their copyright, or somebody wants to say something on that, like a personal experience or blockages or things that you have experienced? Nobody wants to talk about this topic. You want to? Yeah, thank you.
Maybe the copyright topic is kind of part of the whole accountability discussion for AI as well. I think we've heard it before. So not only who's responsible for copyright infringement, I don't know, but also for false results making their way to the public potentially.
Mm-hmm. So this means also the non-authorship or hallucinations or bias. We've talked about bias already as well. You mean in that regard? So copyright in that sense would mean authorship or responsible, you know, information, metadata, and all these things. Okay. Anybody else wants to add on the IPR dimension? Yes, please. I can give you mine faster.
Yeah, so it is a very interesting field, IP and open science, and I think it has very different shades. So in the context of AI, I really like that it is also developing in the sense of that the Creative Commons licensing has now developed new licenses you can use. So it shows us that like this is a topic which is rapidly developing, but I think we are also on our way to organize how it is going to be in the future. And I think the only way to do it actually is to use intellectual property rights. If it is then a copyright, we don't know, but yeah. So I think intellectual property rights are quite important in that context.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully see from the entertainment industry or the news sector how it will go with all the trials that are now already happening, you know, and from the creative sector, trials against the big AI companies or the New York Times. Putting OpenAI in front of the court, or now with the new image generation that basically, is generating what is already there, stealing everything together under fair use principles. So I also think it's quite interesting, and we'll come back to that question. So what new models do we need? And maybe copyright will be one important topic here. Yes, one more. Stefan, are you coming? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to perhaps bring a bit unpopular view in here, but because we may also, and this is, I think, US courts have kind of ruled in the sense that LLMs and AI is creating something bigger out of the material. It's remixing it into something that is so much more than the core material. And we have this in art. We have this in all kinds of other domains where copyrights are certainly very, very important, but we also have to see that there's something new created that goes beyond the core material. So I can totally understand fear of people that their own work is kind of used or abused at least in their view, but also to caution a bit, because if we reuse data from others, like we do meta research and we reuse data from other studies to create a higher evidence class, this is suddenly something very positive because we mash together like 20 clinical trials and use the data from 20 clinical trials. But if an LLM does it, it's suddenly viewed as something kind of intrusive. So
it's about the citation culture of the LLM, right? So if it's not saying that it's standing on the shoulders of giants, right? In that sense, not yet. So we'll see whether a trusted AI environment will be able to do that.
Sorry, just because I'm the neighbor, I just wonder. I mean, you do quote unquote like problem descriptions. What is there on the table to solve problems?
Yeah, this will be the next question. Let's first a bit map the problem space. And I see now very big in the center the lack of recognition, and that is, of course, a good bridge to authorship, accountability, but also the problem that a lot of kind of how to acknowledge this human in the loop idea in a way, and whether you feel we have solved that already, or whether we're just at the beginning of actually understanding what the problem is here. Do you feel in your own experience, or have you been told by researchers that they have exactly this problem, that they fear there is a total lack of recognition? There is a hand here, Stefan. Here. Here.
Yes, definitely. I do wonder, and this is a question I have, I suppose, whether the lack of recognition has significantly increased in the age of AI. I mean, there's, at least in our institution, I work at a Dutch university, there has until now definitely been a lack of recognition for practicing open science. So that bottom line hasn't changed in the age of AI, but I'm curious to know whether in other institutions, other countries, or maybe fields or disciplines, whether the increasingly difficult issue, whether this issue has become increasingly difficult now.
Yeah. Well, it definitely resonates with my own interviews that people say that it was never easy, but it's not getting better. But we had a hand here.
I actually do have other experiences. So I do training in open science. And it's true, the last few years, since AI is also in the picture, people were quite reluctant and always asking, okay, so how do I secure my data, that even if it is open, that is not used by AI? But it changed in the last 6 to 8 months. So now I'm asked in the courses, how can I make my name popular with AI? Because they did understand that if they don't give it out, AI will not pick it up, and this will be the new, somehow a new way we have to deal with. So I don't think that this will take very long. So you already can see the shift.
That's quite interesting. So this is being recognized by an AI or cited by an AI might be something to strive for in the future. Any other comment on this? Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. Thank you for mapping the problem space. And I think we don't have to take a picture now of this because we'll see it afterwards in the documentation. So now I have the same problem again. So now we come to the question that the colleague raised. So what can be done? Before we go into like more a speculative area where we really think about what new models we need, we would like to know from you what kind of support you see or you would actually, from your own experience, need by your institutions, or acknowledgements that you would need. Because these are, again, some of the problems that came up from our discussions, but also from the interviews that I conducted. And the question is, what kind of support is needed? So now on the Slido, so the question is, what forms of recognition or institutional support would help researchers and practitioners pursue openness responsibly in the age of AI? Training, but the question is, who is training the trainers? That is also sometimes not so easy, but we are doing that. Let's give it a bit of a time. There is, of course, the problem that now not all the institutions that we would like to see have signed QARA. I don't know how it is back in your home institutions, whether they have signed it or not. Mine hasn't, deliberately, because they fear. This is my reflection on it, but I can see that they fear another layer of accountability, which they cannot guarantee. And the problem is that the recognition for doing open science already is not at its best. Time, training, systematic ethical appraisal. Yeah, now there is a lot, state policies. I hope I can, funding evaluation. So yeah, maybe we pick out the topic of evaluation. Openness together with AI. What is your in the field in assessment? What is your feeling there? Have you had any experiences, maybe also positive ones, best practices, where you see these things are already acknowledged, or do you think it is not done at all? Is there any position here?
Researchers typically don't disclose the use of AI openly because rightfully they fear being punished for having used it.
Does everybody share this position? I mean, are there fields maybe where this is different? Where, for example, you have to sift through terabytes of data every day, and we have heard in the morning lecture that actually some uses of AI is very well recognized here.
I read a survey done by Nature. I think they published a couple of months ago, where they interviewed researchers, and it was quite interesting to see that the more senior, the more skeptical and averse of using it. And I think about 50% of people said it should be transparent and reported, but about 30% of PhD students, I think, reported that they use it without making it transparent. So there's incentive to not report it. And I think another study showed that actually if people evaluate work and it says AI has been used, they rate the authors as less trustworthy as authors who disclose, which is exactly the opposite of what the disclosure is intended to do.
Yes.
So.
That's a paradox. Many people talk about this problem of labeling use. So when we are in a transition phase, maybe this will change in some months, some years, but right now it's either you do it or you don't, and both ways are just in a way backfire. Yes.
So just a comment. So for all German researchers, there is a guideline by the DFG that has to be followed if you're at a German institution that is following the ethics conduct of the DFG. So I think there are guidelines out there how you should do this. And we had a very, very long discussion also whether every prompt that we give to the AI and everything else should be. So it's difficult, but at least it should be acknowledged. And I mean, I think in my environment, I don't know of any researcher not using it.
Yeah, but are they all?
Yes, of course. We're at the Quest Institute for Responsible Research. Of course, we disclose this.
Yeah, but of course, the guideline is clear. But what use is a guideline if nobody adheres to it? And if there is no way of telling whether people adhere to them?
Yeah, and maybe also there is also not enough best practices. We have Tamara. Yeah, I don't know who was first, but it's not enough best practices also that we can stick to, showing that this is actually a good thing, that it maybe enhanced something, or it brought recognition, or whatever, in whatever carrot you can think of in order to label it. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. That's one thing. I guess we need the guidelines are not that clear, I think, in practice, because I can write just a sentence, I used AI, but is this enough? Is this transparent? And depending on what I'm doing, if I'm writing a research proposal for, I don't know, 8 months, not 8 months, 8 weeks. So how do I document my use of AI, which is very heterogeneous? And the other thing I wanted to say is that it's really discipline specific if someone discloses AI or not. And handling big data with AI is recognized as very smart, and then the people do this. Writing and other things are not. I guess then the people do not tell that they used AI because of different reasons.
We heard today in one session that writing is, for example, the core skill of the social sciences. There was one hand in the back here before, and then Joanna. So this is something that is kind of destroying the epistemic culture in a way of a field, or the core reward or recognition, meritocracy things that are there, right? Please.
Yeah, just wanted to second what was already said. I'm coming from a social sciences university, and disclosing that you're using AI for text production is heavily problematic due to the nature of social sciences work, where text production is part of the intellectual exercise. And we've been working hard internally on policies and also on implementing a sanctioning process.
Okay.
And it's super difficult. It's just, it's a paper tiger so far.
Okay.
Because how to detect actually, as these tools that we know that they're just not as good as the original ones that produce AI text. So I think we are in a dilemma now, and particularly social sciences, where text production is so important, is suffering more, I think, even more than other sciences.
Okay. There was Joanna, and I think then we have to wrap it up for this question. Or we can add one.
So my understanding of AI is that it's just a tool, nothing more, nothing less. And if we treat it for what it is, like a tool, then of course we would describe the methodology behind and why and how we used it as researchers, but also as professionals in the peer review process or wherever else. So that's why I don't quite understand the whole discussion about how should we declare how we use it, and are there any guidelines? Or like, as a thinking professional and an academic, I would expect for myself to give that information proactively. The problem now, of course, is that we all experience is that certain publishers and editorial teams and reviewers, no matter if or if not a journal has a policy for the use of AI, the editors and reviewers might decide otherwise, as we can all see on social media keeps happening. And that's the actual problem, the implementation of any regulation or common sense in how we act professionally. And to me, again, AI is not magic, is not the solution to everything, is certainly more a hurdle than what brings some solutions, like any technology that we use in a daily manner. So therefore, I would call more for responsible use of AI, and in the professional context, of course, be proactive in declaring how and why and what for we use it.
Mm-hmm. So we have one more comment, and then maybe I want to wrap it up also in the direction of the predatory capture or the fear of being captured by unintended users.
Yeah, so when I think about guidelines, I also give workshops on good scientific practice and responsible use of AI. And the good scientific practice guidelines, there's only a few things that are super specific. And when I think about how well we live that in practice, for example, there's also statements about treat others with respect and supervision, etc. And there's so much stuff on power abuse going on that the way that these guidelines are actually evaluated, which is, I think, what we started the discussion with, or policed, it's not working. And therefore, I don't know if that's the way to go anyway. So usually what I would do is to start workshops by saying, what do you do research for? What's your motivation? What do you want to achieve? And then go back to the fact that in order to do that, you need to do things as thoroughly and transparently as possible. But the main thing, you're being accountable. So then when we use AI in a way that we can be accountable for what's the output and we critically check it, I think then it does also not make sense to put a whole prompting list as an appendix, because nobody would read that anyway. The main thing is that we are accountable and we do it with the best intention possible. And I still believe, otherwise I wouldn't be here, that most researchers do have the best intention possible. So yeah,
I don't doubt that. Thank you for this comment. But I would be interested. So, in your practice, have you not come across skepticism of this kind of unbalanced way of knowledge production that we are currently feeling? That there is big tech capturing all the outputs that we are creating. All the nice knowledge graphs we are building will feed in a way their business models, because this is something that I came across a lot in my interviews of people being frustrated by this kind of, not being the authority of knowledge production anymore, which, we can debate that whether science has ever been that. But nevertheless, whether there is now established a huge amount of other types of knowledges, a lot of them, being not very responsible or not very trustworthy, and whether or not your work as researchers is feeding into that. Because this is interesting. Can you, have you come across this? Can you raise your hand if you have come across this skepticism? Because I don't see a lot of hands. That's quite interesting. And also maybe those at home or in the offices, maybe you can also type it in either the Google Doc or the Q&A, whether you have come across this. This would be interesting for us also to see. It's interesting. Okay, but we have to move on. Oh, yeah, okay, no, one more comment.
No, just very briefly about the forms of support that the institutions can do.
Yeah.
And some of the work that we've done is just to go to the core of why are they scared now to share data because of AI. So when we discussed it with research participants, for example, it was the fear of re-identification. Then, we discussed the safeguards that we have in place so that doesn't happen. With researchers and students, they're scared of recognitions and issues like that. So we discussed licensing and whatnot. So just going to the core and understanding, for example, clinicians and clinical researchers, it is their responsibility to maximize the impact of the data sets that they've collected. So actually it works better. And usually research participants want the maximum output from the data that was collected from them. So just bringing everything back to why data is being shared and why research is done the way it's done, under open science.
Yeah. Okay. The question is then, beautiful bridge to the next, even though we have maybe not answered, the question of how institutions can actually support, except what you were just telling us, and asking what is really needed, and then maybe thinking about how this maximization of impact can happen with some kind of responsible AI that is maybe not just commercializing everything and not giving back to the communities. There are, from our workshops, but also in my interviews, there are several visions of how openness would have to be rethought nowadays. Some of them are very much going against what has been considered radically open before. So there are conditional models where data or models just or code open only under defined conditions. For example, think about specific licenses. There are ideas that are long there for community data trusts and strengthening them. Then ideas of reciprocal openness, just giving back, and somehow we'll have to find ways of documenting that or maybe even sanctioning that. Secure research environments, remote access, data visiting, all these things, very importantly, and I don't know how you feel about it, is many people told us that they would vote for stronger case law. So we need actual trials that happen and that make decision on data use or fair enough data use, and maybe also coming back to these benefits or reciprocal openness and giving back to the communities. Right now we have very few of these case law examples, and most of them are also not coming from science. Think about all the publishers that were selling the data to train AI without asking the researchers, because we have given them the rights for that already. So we don't have any of that, and people told us that they wish we had more, be more bold, institution be more bold, go to court and try and see where the limits are. Then, of course, this idea of commons-based infrastructure, like really going into the infrastructures to change the world from there, and also the governance questions that come. So first of all, there is the question number 3, which I think we also have to change to Slido. This is a yes and very simple yes and no question. Do we need new models of openness that go with AI? And this is easy to answer maybe, so we'll just give it a bit of time. And then let's see, how many do we have? 19, 22 people, 23. Where do we do the cutoff? Let's keep it a bit. So, but I see still we maybe is more than no. So I think we can say that with 52 participants, 54, we can leave it here and jump to the next Slido immediately, because now comes our question. So now again, I urge you to type in some words. We have heard about new Creative Commons licenses, for example, but also, as I've just given you the example, maybe it's more a case law approach where we fight and see where we can go, or is it something that the colleague also put forward to find ways of, you know, working together in specific areas to use these models in a way that it impacts the communities that it should serve the best. Please, type in what you think, what kind of new ideas or perspectives or models could guide us forward. The reciprocal approach is being called out here. Is that somebody here in the room who wants to share maybe also some best practices on like the giving back thing? You know, I mean, there is this question that is also discussed a lot in the infrastructure world, how you can put in place a governance of public infrastructures that serve a lot of different users and also produce benefit. And there is funding ideas for that, right? So there is now the prototype fund and the sovereign tech fund that is widened to the European Union level, that where people think about exactly this question, how then the maintenance and the care for infrastructures is also considered, and the long running, the question of preservation, we had it today in a session, for example, is also considered here. How, for example, companies that use scientific data for things could kind of in another way give back to the communities. Anybody wants to share something here? I see graphs, I see paper use. Nano publications were mentioned. So anybody wants to share his or her word, term, model for the future? Ideas? Yes, please.
I would like to raise the system point of view. So those who are running their own repositories, you see massive amount of requests coming, and we had to cut some requests because of that. That means there is some model here, there that do not know about our data, and someday researcher may come and ask why my data wasn't found by this model. So I feel like a criminal. I typed the open weight model license, so we could share. Okay, if you are open model, these are okay to harvest, because this traffic is picking more and more and more.
Question would then be how to police that, right? How to see which scraper comes from which company doing which model. Yeah, that is not very easy. But I agree. I mean, that's what we hear a lot, the problem of having to limit the infrastructural access due to the scraping. You want to say something?
The question is as well, what do we want? Do we want research to proceed to that knowledge becomes more widespread, that knowledge grows, or do we want our egos to to shine in this world. I mean, there's so many things that I presented at conferences and that have been picked up, and I'm happy that it has been used and not because I wouldn't have written it up. So it's great that it's out there. So it's knowledge that's growing. So we should question ourselves why we do research or what is research. Especially when you think about licensing or modeling new models of licensing.
So back also to what the colleague has said, questioning our own motivations and yeah. I've seen a hand somewhere, but I don't remember. Yeah, here. Yeah, no, I can do it.
Yeah, I would just maybe would like to complement what you said. I mean, our ego or why are we conducting research? If we have a look on what is in the training data set, yeah, there is web text, common crawls, what else? Wikipedia, what else? Is there social media as well? So why shouldn't we contribute scientific and reliably researched knowledge, yeah, and give it to the big companies in order to a little bit, yeah, make these data sets a little bit more reliable. So from my perspective, the scientific academic community, yes, go open.
Yeah, I think this is a good question to ask. But then, for example, in my interviews, researchers shared some experiences where they found data of themselves in some specific sorting models that were sorting social media for more attention. And that was projects where they were analyzing hate speech. And the way the model used the data, of course, was not in kind of eliminating hate speech, but to build better advertising engines that could go along with the, rage that was there in the social media. So people discover these kind of things, and then they are, angry that these things happen. No, here was the hand. Here. So this is
This is an ethical discussion, right? I mean, I would be happy if any scientific research becomes public knowledge. That's kind of the point, right? It is furthering science, furthering knowledge, progress, etc., etc. But there's a difference between that and publicly funded research becoming privatized and commercialized. And there's even maybe an analogy in how our articles or publications are also privatized. So there's go open, sure, but if the let's say net result is also that you're feeding into commercial enterprises who privatize that knowledge for you to only be open if you subscribe to a certain service, then that becomes highly problematic, I think. I'm not sure how you would police this. I don't have the solution, to be honest. But there's a categorical difference between those two things, I suppose.
Just on that, it's not an ethical question as well. It's a political and commercial question also. What we're actually doing is we are buying our research back from commercial publishers. That's what happened with open access, but just to be aware of that. And it can be open, but the public is not aware of it. So what commercial companies are doing is they're selling research knowledge and people are buying it. And it's not, I guess it's not enough to make it openly. We do have to make it accessible and fair. But it should be in the hands of the research and scientific community, in my opinion.
I think, is it also not just a bit of an illusion that as researchers we get to decide how our research results are being used? I think it's kind of impossible for us to say that, so I made this, but you can't touch it if you use it in a way that I don't like. So then the responsibility doesn't go in the commercial parties, but it rests with us, the researchers, as it has always done. If you make a bomb, you need to be responsible about who gets to use it. So if you make something that is of potential dual use, then it's your responsibility, I would say, as a researcher, to figure out how accessible the results are. But to think that somehow we have control about who uses our research results is kind of an illusion, I think.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe we should not necessarily embrace but fight those companies and their ways of trapping the content more in pictures so far, but to make them unreadable and even to poison the softwares that use AI. So there are already softwares that poison pictures, so that when they're used by AI, it punishes the tool. So is that a solution? I don't know. But those companies, they are not. It's not a two-way discussion. Like, we are proposing solutions and ways of sharing, and they're just taking.
No, just a short comment. I often feel in these discussions that commercial is often seen as all of them are evil, and I'm sure there's a lot of commercial companies that maybe don't have exactly our values, but there's also a lot of commercial companies that do want to solve problems, and they become successful because they provide services that we buy. So sometimes I feel like maybe it's a bit underestimated what useful outputs they can also do with the data we put. Isn't it that AlphaFold was also developed by Google, I think, right? So the commercial use can also have some very useful output. It's not always evil. That was just my comment.
Yeah, I think really in a way I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this discussion, because I think the reality here is that the research system as a whole, if we like take the distance away from like an individual researcher's recognition within the system, but look at it at a structural level, we are part of a public research system, most of us in this room, I assume, that is funded by taxpayers in order to create value for society. And so I think really we don't have a choice here to say that like we're not going to engage with what might become the most productive knowledge creation mechanism in the coming whatever decade, that we are going to like check out of that and try to prevent being part of that. It's just not a real possibility. Or rather, if we do that, I think already now a research system that is under political pressure, and I think a lot of countries see the research system that is under attack. Certainly we feel it in Switzerland, financially, I mean. If we say like we're not interested in that, it's like a guaranteed way towards irrelevance in the long run, I feel. Now, with that in mind, I actually think we have a lot of work to do to update about how we think in terms of like the output we put into the public sphere to be then used by whatever society, whether it's commercial actors or civil society actors, whatever they do with it. But I think we do have like fundamentally the frameworks to allow us to think about that. We have to like think about how we do ethics. Like we have ethical panels, but right now they're not very good at like thinking about the ethical concerns of data put out in the world in the context where the data can be used by AI companies. Like we need to be better at doing that. We have like frameworks for technology transfer and licensing, where the goal is kind of like to get back something from the universities by engaging with commercial actors. And sometimes we want to get money back, but I think at least in my institution, I think it's a common occurrence in Europe, at least maybe less in the US. But like the money is not really the main input we want from a company. We want like relations with the commercial actors, really. That's kind of what we want. And I think like with AI, we should be much more aggressive with AI companies to say, we are willing to like make it easy for you to get access to our research data, but in exchange, we want to be part of a conversation with you about how open your models are, how much access we have as researchers into your models, how much we are involved in like the creation of these AI models. And these are conversations I think that we can have, that we should have collectively. And we actually know pretty well what we want to avoid, which is the situation we have right now with the big publishers and the gold open access nonsense, which is like not at all working, but at least it gives us like a good example of what we shouldn't get to. So I think in a sense, I'm more optimistic than simply like throwing our hands in the air and saying we can't do anything here. But yeah, there is a lot of work to like rethink the various like knowledge transfer, ethics, the innovation pipelines that we have to make them adapted to the AI world.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on this, and I think that's also a couple of comments before just said, okay, so technology, so what is the role of academia in creating knowledge? And we have this case in biomedical sciences. Somebody came up with discovering regulatory T cells. This guy is not making a lot of money out of this. This is done by companies devising drugs that use these mechanisms. So there is a knowledge production in academia, and we have good models, as you said. We already have good models, technology transfer, and also how we assess technologies. All technologies, like nuclear energy and everything else, has good and bad sides. So just sociologists can use this knowledge from these technologies to just transfer this to those new cases and see how we can navigate this. But I just really want to caution, I mean, openness is such a valuable thing to science and to humanity. We should not endanger this, but by just saying, oh, somebody may use our things for something evil, they will do this anyways. They will, somebody else, not the AI, but somebody else will use it for marketing purposes in a different way, or write an algorithm that we don't see. It's just that we have to be sure that openness should still be at the very core of what we do, because we're taxpayer-funded public institutions. We have to share our knowledge. That is what academia is for, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think also the morning session, in the keynote also, it was mentioned that by being radically open, really radically open, this would also maybe help us to kind of secure all these kind of reciprocal benefits and not having any lock-ins or, you know, switching services to the best company that is trying to sell the services. So I want to leave the discussion here. Sorry for being like the provocative agent here, asking all these questions, but I really wanted to get we really wanted to get your opinions on that. And I think we can see, Stefan, do you want to come up here? We can see that many of the problems are indeed old problems that we are facing since a very long time. And now I think my colleague Stefan will help us to, just to wrap the session up. No, it's not. No, we don't have it.
No Q&A.
No, I asked already, Stefan. Okay. I asked already. No Q&A. No, it's good. You can.
Okay. Last comment. Yeah. To all at your offices or at home, we will definitely document also your questions and the ratings. So. So how we will use the outcome of the session. So if you use the Google Doc, or you can do it also afterwards, add your names if you want to your notes and feedback, so that we can also include you in future recognition if you publish more about it. We will publish a short blog post summarizing today's discussion beyond the recap that we will have tomorrow. And the insight will inform our ongoing policy work on open science and AI. At least in Berlin, we have started with the policy paper where we try to also inform the Berlin, the German federal area, but we're focusing on the Berlin politicians first. So if any other international initiatives are already going on, please contact us so maybe we can also connect there. And then we will invite you to take part in implementing some of the proposed activities, such as skills development. Training came up a lot, but also to keep keep the things open. And yeah, contact us at openscience@berlin-university-alliance.de if there are other questions. And we'll have the recap tomorrow and more conversations with you in between.